Bitch, just do the lore.
I'm just gonna hit record now. Okay.
Okay.
That's the intro. The intro is you calling me a bitch and then me hitting record.
So it's our usual intro,
Basically, yeah. Take 3.
Zen1 asks, could you please do a podcast on beasts? So today we're gonna do a podcast on beasts.
Yay.
How exciting is that?
Yay.
So Richard, could you please tell me what's the plague of the beast?
It's not like really a plague because you can't catch it from beasts. It's called a plague because it's spreading across Yharnam. And it's caused by people taking in old blood. But it looks like the Healing Church have lied to the people of Yharnam and said that it's spread by outsiders. So that's why in the game they're all calling you an accursed beast, and why the old woman says that the blood of Yharnam's been ruined by outsiders.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you hang around the Yharnamite like civilians, you can hear them talking, and sometimes they say like, we know who's to blame, we know who's to blame. And they mean like they think outsiders are at fault for what's happened.
I thought they meant the Healing Church when they said that.
It looks like they do hate the Healing Church, but like the lines they say either side of that are like I can smell you, stranger, and things like that. So I think they're supposed to be talking to you.
And they do hate the Healing Church because I think you mentioned in another podcast, if we wear a certain garb, they're...
Oh no, that was oh god, okay, this is like a bonus like technical thing that most people don't know, because I didn't know either, and Meph tested it and she figured it out. There, you will very rarely hear a line where one of the Healing Church people yells death to the minister.
Mm-hmm. And
we used to think that was a rare thing that only happened if you were wearing Healing Church garb, right?
Okay.
What it actually is the specific Yharnam hunter that has the torch and the wooden shield.
Right.
He has one specific move where he waves the torch at you while blocking. And while doing that, he says weird lines that were otherwise not in the game. Like, for some reason, when he's doing that move, there's some, like, variable that's set weirdly, and he starts accessing lines that you never ever hear anywhere else, to the point where it's pretty clearly not intended. Like, it's like a bug, where he starts saying cut lines. So he will say death to the minister. He will also say other odd things like, rip that kid apart, and at one point he says, like, Idona will be the judge. Which, what does that mean? We have no idea. So that's where the death to the minister thing came from. It's like that specific hunter will sometimes say it, and yeah, it's really odd. A good way to it's the hunter model that's behind the. They all say this, but the easiest one to test with is the one behind the dog cages in Forbidden Woods, because he does that animation when the gate shuts. So if you run around and just keep triggering him, he will sometimes say, like, really odd lines that he's probably not supposed to. But the other ones in Yharnam do it as well. It's just tied to a specific animation that only one hunter does.
Awesome, that's super interesting, thank you.
But yeah, the Yharnamites clearly do hate the Healing Church, because it's really obvious there's a note in the Dark House that says that the Healing Church abandoned us, and they blocked Cathedral Ward. And then when you go into Cathedral Ward, in that misty street where you recruit Ariana and the narrow-minded man, there's a bunch of Healing Church corpses, and they all have Yharnamites standing over them. The implication being that the Yharnamites killed the Healing Church.
Right.
Right. But yeah, they still think that it's caused by outsiders.
And while we're on the topic, could you talk about the Ashen blood?
Well, we don't know what Ashen blood was. We just know that it's a mysterious sickness. This mysterious sickness struck old Yharnam, and then the Healing Church gave them all this antidote. And then that happened prior to old Yharnam being destroyed, and everyone there turning into a beast. And it's possible that Ashen blood might refer to, like, if you overdose on beast blood pellets. because it looks like Old Yharnam was the healing church sent people to Old Yharnam to like seed it with beast blood pellets, like give everyone beast blood to see what would happen.
Hmm.
So it's possible Ashen blood had something to do with that. But the thing is, the antidote works, and it works on actual poison. So it's not like a placebo. Like it has a function, and it possibly was like something that poisoned people in Old Yharnam. And all the sources of poison that we know of in the game are connected to corrupted blood. So it's possible the Healing Church were giving people in Yharnam some kind of bad blood, and that's what caused this Ashen blood disease. I think the only kind that's not explicitly blood is the snakes, but even then, like, the snakes are covered in vermin.
That's for later.
Yeah, and like the swamps poison you as well. It's like rapid poison is, I think, always linked to blood in some way. And then like slow poison is things like the blood-starved beast. Like that will poison you, and it's an Old Yharnam. So maybe whatever blood is in that, like the citizens were also using.
Because I thought there was a consensus in thinking that the Ashen blood was the Healing Church sort of poisoning people with old blood to
Yeah.
experiment on them so they can see the side effects.
Yeah, the Healing Church were experimenting on Old Yharnam. Like not explicitly, but they were like sort of like introducing different kinds of blood and pathogen into Old Yharnam to see what would happen. There's a line in the Japanese description of beast blood pellets that's basically like, it's impossible to translate because we don't have a word for it. But it's basically saying like the Healing Church are denying any knowledge of beast blood pellets because it's clearly them. Sort of. Like, it's saying like this is clearly the work of the Healing Church, and that's why they deny knowing about it. And that's why like the way that you unlock beast blood pellets in the game is you get the Choir's badge, who are the top of the Healing Church.
Right.
So beast blood pellets are made by the Healing Church. And you find a bunch of them in Old Yharnam, and then later on you find a bunch of them in Forbidden Woods, where the suspicious beggar is, and he's got the beggar disguise on.
So then it's pretty clear that the Healing Church is using the beast blood pellets to overdose Yharnam.
Yeah,
right?
in Old Yharnam to see what would happen.
Yeah, because
now they're trying to do it in Forbidden Woods.
Richard, you're confusing me because you were like, oh, maybe it is poison.
No, I'm not sure what Ashen blood was specifically, but I am sure that they were like lacing Old Yharnam with beast blood pellets. But I don't know if that's what caused Ashen blood.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, they're currently doing that to Forbidden Woods, which is why you find all the beast blood pellets there, because the suspicious beggar is going around Forbidden Woods giving people beast blood pellets. So they're looking to use Forbidden Woods as the next experiment.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll talk about Forbidden Woods in another podcast a little later.
Yeah.
In more detail. So we'll leave that be for now. And you talked about the old blood.
Yeah.
Could you tell me what old blood is, how it was discovered, and how it's related to the Plague of the Beast?
Old blood is blood that is found in the Chalice dungeons by the Byrgenwerth scholars. And what we know about old blood is that it causes your body to change. But the kind of changes that you get seem to differ from person to person, depending on what kind of blood you're using, what kind of person you're using it on, what other like factors are. It basically makes your body mutable. And then other factors will determine what happens to your body after that.
Okay, thank you. And where exactly did the Byrgenwerth scholars find it?
In the Chalice dungeons.
Was it like on a platter?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, those altars that you find and they've got like the treasure chest and it's got ritual blood in it. I think they just found blood like in bowls and things in the Chalice dungeons.
Okay. Because there are also theories out there that they found a great one in the Chalice dungeons, like maybe Ebrietas, and then extracted blood from her type deal, or Yharnam.
No, that's later. Yeah, they don't actually find any great ones until after they start messing around with old blood. The first great one they find is Kos.
Right.
What happened, the timeline is they find the old blood, in the Chalice dungeons. They use it on. They start experimenting with it, and it starts transforming people. But they can't control the transformations, and the transformations are into like beasts and monsters. So that's why Willem says, "Fear the old blood. We're not allowed to use this stuff," and that's what he means when he talks about evolution without courage. Because he's saying, like, we're going to destroy the human race if we keep evolving ourselves without understanding what we're doing. So that's what leads to them going to the fishing hamlet. Because Willem's like, well, the way that you control old blood is that you have to have your mind operating on the level of the Great Ones. So therefore we have to find the Great Ones, and we have to find people who have used old blood, like different, who have changed themselves differently. So when they find out about the hamlet where there's this Great One off the coast, and there are these people there who are looking to be like partially fish, they raid it, and that's why they kill Kos, and that's also why when you get the accursed brew item, it says like, when Bergenworth raided the hamlet, they were killing people, and then they were opening up their skulls to see if they had eyes on the insides of their skulls. Because Willem is trying to figure out how you get these eyes on the inside. So they don't encounter Great Ones until they find Kos.
And where does Ebrietas fit into the picture with all that?
Ebrietas is just the choir, who are the upper part of the healing church. They find a chalice that goes to Ys, and they mess around in Ys for a while and eventually find Ebrietas and bring her back.
So Bergenworth never meets Ebrietas first?
The thing is, Bergenworth, you know the Augur of Ebrietas, right?
Yeah.
They met those. Which is like, this is the thing that's leading you toward Ebrietas.
Right.
But they never meet Ebrietas herself. That's not till the choir find Ys. But I'm not sure where they get the Ys chalice from. Like, it's not clear if they found the Ys chalice in the Chalice dungeons, or they found some other place that worshipped the Ys chalice and stole it. No, it says it was the first chalice brought to the surface. So they must have found the Ys chalice in one of the other Chalice dungeons, but we don't know which one.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. And what does Miyazaki say about Beasthood?
Miyazaki says a thing about Beasthood, which is relevant to the way that clerics turn into bigger beasts. He uses the metaphor of like, the beasthood is shackled in you and it's always trying to escape. So the more that you resist it, the tighter and tighter it becomes, and the more strains put on it, so that when you transform, if you've been resisting beasthood for a long time, it's like this sudden violent eruption and you turn into a huge beast. As opposed to the little beast patients in Yharnam, or the werewolf people who just sort of turned into one. There wasn't much resistance. That's why the game talks about cleric beasts as though they're a separate thing, because the clerics of the healing church are like, they're trying to resist the blood, and they're trying to resist the transformation, so that when the clerics transform, instead of turning into little beasts, they turn into massive things like Emilia and Ludwig. And this is why the church switched from Gehrman's hunters to Ludwig's hunters, because Ludwig's hunters are specifically geared toward fighting extremely large beasts. So that's why Ludwig's hunters all use extremely heavy weapons like the Holy Blade and the Kirkhammer. And like, Ludwig's rifle is like this massive rifle, it's not a pistol. Because it's designed to stagger things like that are the size of the cleric beast.
Right, yeah. So people turning into beasts seems to be related to the old blood, the red moon, inside eyes, umbilical cords, phantasms, and vermin.
All the things.
Which we talked about in depth in previous podcasts. So I'm just going to link those in the description. And I think we can skip those for today.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing because my boyfriend is making faces at me. He's trying to trip me up, man. You also talked about how Loran is a land that succumbed to the plague of the beasts, similarly to Yharnam.
Yeah.
Whereas Pthumeru is a land that unlocked the Eldritch Truth.
Pthumeru is, yeah.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that although there are beasts in Pthumeru, they didn't succumb to the scourge the same way?
Yeah.
So could you just briefly talk about maybe the differences between Loran and Pthumeru and what happened? And why didn't they succumb to the plague the same way?
We don't know why they didn't succumb. It's just like those represent sort of two paths that Yharnam could take. Because Loran fell completely to the plague of the beasts. Whereas Pthumeru, like, there are beasts in Pthumeru, there are beast-possessed souls and scourge beasts, but the bosses you fight there, apart from the bloodletting beast, are not, like, generally beasts. There's, like, the watchdog of the old lords, but that's not a person who turned into something. That's just a monster. Like, you fight Pthumerian elders and keeper of the old lords and things like that in Pthumeru. Whereas in Loran, it's beasts everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that Pthumeru unlocked the Eldritch Truth. Doesn't really go into much detail, but it seems to be like they... It's all because Pthumeru are like the beginning of all civilization, it looks like. Like, they start off as the servants of the Great Ones. So they predate, presumably, Loran. And they're like the source of old blood. But yeah, Pthumeru, they unlock the Eldritch Truth, whatever that means. Presumably from, I don't know, hanging around with the Great Ones all the time or something. The way it's described is like the Great Ones were sleeping in the tombs and the Pthumerians were their servants. And then at some point the Pthumerians decided to, like, that they would be independent of the Great Ones. And that's why they have a queen. Because they say, we're not ruled by the Great Ones anymore, we're going to have our own power structure. So they have a queen, and then they have under her, there's like the descendants and the elders.
Mm-hmm.
And the watchers of the labyrinth and thing, they have like a power, and then they have their own like power structure, and then on the surface you have Annalise and her knights, who are also descended from Pthumerians. Another example would be in Redgrave will yell at me, but he won't listen to this. In Canehurst, you find a bunch of kin cold blood. And Redgrave was saying that's because the executioners were kin. They were the ones from the nightmare with the tentacle faces. But I think it's more likely that because Canehurst are descendants of the Pthumerians and they're messing around with the Eldritch Truth, that a few of the Canehurst people were probably on the way to becoming kin.
Okay, thank you.
Yay.
And I'm not going to ask you to talk about Loran because, again, we talked about it in the podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to link those in
See,
the
but
comments.
they say that Pthumeru unlocked the Eldritch Truth and Loran didn't, but Loran did seem to produce Kos. So I guess some people in Loran figured it out, and that's where Kos comes from. Yharnam is effectively destroyed, but we become a Great One. So Yharnam ends up following the path that Loran does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's that trophy that we get when we turn into a Great One?
Childhood's beginning. Yeah, hang on. Actually, there's a helpful person did a comparison in different languages. I'll go find it. Here we are. Hot off the presses. While I'm finding it, the name Childhood's Beginning is probably a reference to an Arthur C. Clarke book called Childhood's End. Because that ends with humanity evolving into like a new species, basically, which is what happens to us.
So that kind of sounds like a happy ending rather than Yharnam collapsing.
Well, it's a happy ending for us, I guess. But the thing is, like, someone could stumble upon the Hunter's Nightmare and the ruins of Yharnam in the future in the same way that we stumble upon the ruins of Loran. Like, the idea is that the Nightmare Frontier and the Nightmare of Mensis are leftover parts of Loran.
Okay, but that's not what I mean.
Yeah.
Richard?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to give you attitude, but it's Tuesday evening, it's very hard.
That's alright.
In Childhood's Beginning, it says you became an infant Great One, lifting humanity into its next childhood.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like it was just for us, like we lifted the whole humanity, which seems like a
Yeah.
happy ending for everyone, including Yharnam.
Yeah, the literal is human evolution enters its next childhood, is the literal translation. So it doesn't say that, like, we... Oh, yeah, okay. So, yeah, I guess you can read it two ways. Either we lift humanity into its next childhood and we keep going onward, or it might mean like human evolution enters the next childhood could mean that everything goes back to how it was. Like humans go back to being just humans again.
In one of the endings, the moon presence traps us.
Yeah.
In another ending, we just wake up and like go off and everything is crap anyway, probably.
Yeah.
So there like this should be at least the one happy ending we get.
It's Souls, they don't have happy endings.
Aw. Listen, I need at least one happy ending. It's Tuesday. Can't handle this.
The happy ending is that the hunter marries Eileen and they run off and live in a cottage together.
Where though?
Somewhere far away.
Is it a nice cottage?
It's very nice.
Is it by a lake?
Sure.
Does Velka come to visit?
Yes.
Okay. I can get on board with that.
They live in the Ringed City.
No, there you go. You've gone and ruined it. Thanks a lot, Richard.
As we're recording this, it has been a year to the day that the Ringed City was released.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one has anything to say about it.
Yeah. Richard, did you know I have a lore video on the Ringed City?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we started doing podcasts, I used to do intelligent lore. I think there are several elements that point to the image represented in the guidance rune as being a seahorse. First of all, there's the physical resemblance, such as the curly tail and the funny-looking head. Plus, in mythology, a hippocampus has been known to bear wings, and the elements found on each side of the rune could represent wings.
I remember that. That was a golden age. Before I ruined everything.
Okay. So, you know how some people, they seem to be resistant to the plague? Like, not everyone you meet in the game is a beast.
Yeah, yeah.
Why is that?
With our hunter, we seem to be resistant because what happens in that cutscene when we pass out is that this, like, blood werewolf thing reaches out to touch us, and then it burns up. And then we see messengers crawl on us. And I think that's meant to symbolize, like, the plague of the beast is about to infect us, and then the messengers kind of inoculate us somehow against the plague. So that's why we don't transform.
But what about for people like Alfred, Eileen, the nun, the chapel dweller? Why don't they transform?
I think the key thing is, like, a lot of those people are foreigners. So they probably haven't taken in a lot of old blood. But you see like, Gascoigne. Yeah, Gascoigne transforms, Gilbert transforms. Do we want to talk about, like, that they cut a bunch of Red Moon stuff and that Lance kind of dug it up?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay. You know how in Yharnam there are these, like, technically human hunters, but they're very clearly beasts. Like, they're huge and they have, like, the beast faces and this, like ridge on their back and stuff. They're, like, really tall, strong. Right.
Yeah.
What was going to happen is, this is a technical limitation that they ran into and we're not sure how. Originally, those were loaded into maps and basically switched off. And the humans were there as well. And you would have the human hunters running around, and then you would have those, like, transformed hunters loaded into the map but kind of turned off. Like, they wouldn't do anything and they'd be invisible. And you couldn't interact with them.
Okay.
So we think the idea was that after the Red Moon, like, it would set a flag that would swap the two around. So it would turn off all the human hunters and turn the beast ones on. So it would be like the human hunters in Yharnam transformed, right?
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would make sense, because I was always wondering, why is it like, you go in Yharnam and you're like, okay, well, clearly people are turning into beasts, and then when you meet Jura, you're like, well, yes, I know people are turning into beasts. I have eyes. How is this a mystery?
Yeah. So, like, just to quickly go into the technical side of that, what happens is that in the the build that Lance is data mining. The maps, there's like one map per area, and they're sort of dynamic, and they have things that can be switched on and off in them. And then we're not sure what happens, but in the release version, which is 9 months later, instead of having one map per area, there's a whole lot of different ones. So instead of having one map that's changed on the fly, the game just loads in a completely different map if something changes. If that makes sense. So like an example is when you use the Lawrence's skull and it shifts the time from evening to night. And that
Right.
makes the giants go to sleep. That's not the game telling the giants to go to sleep. What happens is literally it unloads Cathedral Ward and then loads in another version of Cathedral Ward with sleeping giants in it. So whatever they had planned with these like dynamic maps that would change with the red moon, something happened technically that meant they couldn't do it. So they ended up doing this sort of like brute force method of just having multiple maps that they switched between.
I see.
Yeah, so that's originally the maps would have altered and more like the world tendency in Demon Souls, like things would have changed depending on the moon phase.
Cool.
And that's probably why like the red moon doesn't appear over certain areas. Because they just maybe didn't have time to finish a red moon version of that map. There's no red moon over Bergenworth or over Old Yharnam or Hemwick, and I think maybe like this is speculation based on just like, hey, the maps in the TGS build are written differently. But it looks like they would have had to have made a separate map for all those different areas under the red moon, and they only had enough time and resources to do red moon maps for the areas where it was absolutely necessary.
I see.
So it looks like there was a technical issue that stopped that happening. Because it seems to work in the TGS build, but not in the finished one.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What preventative steps can you take to avoid the plague of the beast?
You get branded by the moon presence.
Anything else?
Well, there's a cut line where it looks like you could heal Gilbert and he wouldn't turn into a beast.
That was
But
one of my questions, but go ahead.
Well, there's cut dialogue from Gilbert that's like, "Oh, thank you. This saved me." We don't know what it was, but like you would have if you brought him an item or blood or something, he would avoid turning into a beast, but we're not sure what that would have been.
So, in the finished game, can you get rid of the plague of the beast once you catch it?
No, because it's not a literal disease. It's just like you have so much old blood in your system that you're starting to change.
Okay, well, can you unchange?
Yeah, I guess if you like got because this seems to be what's happened with the Canehurst people. That they're Pthumerians, but they've been cut off from Pthumerian blood, so they've just started turning into people. And that's why, like, that thing Alfred says about a scholar of Bergenworth bringing old blood to Canehurst, I think it wasn't a scholar of Bergenworth, I think it was probably Lawrence, and this is a lie. But the idea is if you brought old blood to the Canehurst people and they took it in again, they would start becoming Pthumerian again.
Interesting.
And that seems to be why maybe Annalise wants blood dregs.
What was that?
That was me. That wasn't actually a burp. That was just my stomach making a weird noise.
So, sorry, you said Annalise wants blood drags to do what?
Annalise wants... Have you done the vile blood stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
I married her,
And
remember in my Dendy version?
that's true. Yeah, the Dendy version where you marry her and you get a different ending. And you
Yeah.
can... If you press select, you can just change characters at any time.
Yeah.
It's called Bloodborne Rainbow Edition. Annalise wants blood dregs. That's how you level up the Covenant, quote unquote level up, because you don't get anything useful. She wants corrupted blood. That's what you're giving her.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that if she has enough, she'll be able to bear a child of blood, which is similar to, I guess it's supposed to be linked in with what happens at Ariana, where Ariana's got corrupt blood and she hangs around Erden Chapel and gives birth.
Yeah, so I was thinking what we should tell Queen Annalise is like, listen, go hang out the creepy chapel. You'll get pregnant right away, girl.
Yeah, I don't know why she doesn't do that.
I guess she's too good to Yharnam. She doesn't want to hang out with peasants.
Yeah,
Kinda like GSF, he's too good for regular people.
that's true. Yeah, I'm well known as a recluse. It's not like just some random crazed Russian can message me and be like, "Do a podcast!" I'm like, oh. If that happened, I would say no. I would not consent to doing it every week for months.
Because you don't talk to peasants. I think that's it. I think that's covered. I think we
Yeah?
did it. Yeah, we should always do it on a day where I have to work the next day, because you can see it's to the point.
Yeah, that was only an hour.
I know, right? And most of it is salvageable.
Great.
I don't know if I said it or if I wanted to say it, but I'm not gonna ask you about Lawrence because we also have an hour and a half long podcast on Lawrence.
On Lawrence.
Which I will put in the
Yeah.
in the thing downstairs.
Did you like the thumbnails?
I love the thumbnails. By the
Thank
way,
you.
everyone, if you see a really cool thumbnail, it's because JSF made it.
My favorite is the older one.
Well, again, thank you very much.
That's all right. I can't think of a better way of celebrating the 1-year anniversary of the Ring City.
So, do you mind if I make a coffee and I'll be right back?
That's fun. I accidentally ruined the Audacity interface by dragging stuff around, so I'm just trying to fix it.
Hello?
Hello.
We're good. We're good, and we're focused. We can do this. Anyway, I already have like 3 or 4 different intros pre-prepared, so that's cool. At least that's out of the way. Sometimes that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
sometimes we say things that are too intelligent, so I have no intros.
That's true. We recorded something, but it was so good we had to scrap it. It was off-brand by being too good.
I joke.
I know.
You're not worth stalking. Ooh, I flipped my hair as I said that. Babe, it's not an insult if I'm telling someone I'm not stalking them, okay?
It's fine.
Julie should feel relieved.
He should feel relieved, yes. I've been trying to get my boyfriend on one of these podcasts. I think I'm close to like almost nearly him considering it.
And that's when everyone unsubscribes from you, because they're like, boyfriend?
There was something else mean. Something about your lore, but I don't remember. I was like, oh, I should say it to GSF, and then I forgot what it was.
So basically, whenever you hear a really good insult, you just like,
I think of you automatically.
yeah, you file it away and use it on me later.
Yeah, pretty much. Sometimes I write it down too, because I'm like, I'll forget. Better like email it to myself. Look at me, I'm Richard, I'm a nice person, and I'm funny and smart, and I'm talented in multiple areas. Also, I remember things. You know, you never get a girlfriend with that attitude, Richard.
I know.
You gotta humble yourself down a little bit
I
there.
think it's pretty clear that that's happened.
So sad.